Hey y'all, this is Lexi out here in my garden, and I have had a couple of emails recently about squash pollination issues, and folks aren't seeing the kind of squash pollination that they're used to in years past, and so they're asking about what they can do to help with their squash production. So I am out here in my garden, and I will admit that I've also been having some issues with pollination this year. I've just not been seeing the bees coming around like I have in years past, and this is really sad to me. And I think it's important, before I talk about what you can do about squash pollination, I want to talk about a little bit about what we can be doing to support bees in our yard. Now, I think when I say bees, most people think honeybees, domesticated bees that you keep in hives, and while those bees are really important, they are not a native species. They're a European species, and they do provide a good service, but there are lots and lots of native bee species in North America that we can create, habitat for, to increase their populations. And they provide a lot of pollination services to all kinds of different plants in our garden and our yards, in the natural environment. So it's important to be supporting the native bees as well as the domesticated honeybees. And it's easy to construct habitat for native bees. I'm not going to go into detail in this video, but if you're interested, you can just Google creating native bee habitat and you will find loads and loads of information that you can use to set up your yard to be welcoming to native bee species. And the nice thing about attracting native bees is that, other than a little bit of time spent constructing the habitat, you don't have to maintain and care for them the way you do for honeybees. So, all right. Squash. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Sorry, let me back up. Creating habitat for native bees is probably going to help you in future years, but it's not going to alleviate your immediate problem with squash not being pollinated right now. So I'm going to talk about hand pollination, which is really easy to do with squash, and I'm going to talk about the male and female flowers, how to identify them on your squash plants, and what to do. So first off, if you're having pollination issues, you'll know because you'll get little shriveled squash that fall off your plant. So you can see the blossom end is all shriveled and brown. It's really tiny, and it just kind of fell off my plant. I found this on the ground. So I know that I'm having pollination issues, and I've been out here every morning. I must have missed this guy, hand pollinating my squash. So the first thing with squash is to identify your male and female flowers. So I'm going to show you that right now. So this plant has a bunch of male flowers on it, and you can tell because there is nothing underneath the flower. It's just a straight stem going underneath it. So this is a male flower. And then on this plant, we've got a female flower that is bloomed, and you can see it's a female because it's got this, baby zucchini on the back end of it. So, and then on the inside of the flower, you can see the stigma. That's the female part, and this one's covered in ants. And on the males, this one's closed up already, but you can see the stamen on it, so it's a little different looking on the inside. So in order to hand pollinate, you need to get a male flower, and I have taken off the petals so that it will be easier to do the pollination part. And then you just get to your female flower and you go inside with the male flower parts, and basically you just kind of paint like you'll have a paintbrush. So just kind of gently dab around the female flower. And sorry, I'm doing this with my left hand so I can do it on video. It's a little awkward, but that's basically it. And that is pollinated your squash, and you should know pretty quickly that it has set. I found that if you don't get pollination, the flower doesn't stay on as nicely as it would when it's pollinated. So also it will just shrivel up and turn brown and fall off, so you'll know that you haven't gotten good pollination. Hopefully this helps you pollinate your squash, get a good crop, and, you know, again, build some bee habitat for the native bees, and hopefully next year you won't be having this issue. Hope that's helpful. Thanks.